Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome once again, and we're continuing our journey with the letters of the tongue, and today we will be talking about the letter dha, dhal and tha. So bismillah, let's start. In terms of learning outcomes and what we intend to get out of this video, we want three main points. The first is to understand the makhraj of the dha, the dhal and the tha. The second is to talk about what happens with the tongue and differentiate what happens with the tongue with the dha versus the dhal and the tha. And the third point is to touch on some of the common errors. Firstly, let's start with the makhraj of these three letters, the dha, the dhal and the tha. So al, al, ath, dha, dhi, dhu, dha, dhi, dhu, tha, thi, thu. So if you notice with all three letters, they come from the same makhraj. So what's that makhraj? So if these are your upper incisors, and this is your tongue, and you've got the tip of the tongue, and that's the incisor, so you have the tip of the tongue with the tip of the upper incisors. So the tip of the tongue with the tip of the upper incisors. So we say al, ath, the tip with the tip. Now, you don't want to extend the tongue very far out. So you don't say al, neither do you want to have the tongue on the inside face of the teeth. You want the very tip of the tongue on the tip of the upper incisors. The tip on the tip. So the makhraj of the dha, the tha and the dhal is from the tip of the tongue with the tip of the upper incisors. So here's the makhraj of these three letters. In the picture on the right, we have the dha, and on the picture on the left, we have the dhal and the tha. First, let's talk about the makhraj. As we said before, when you look at the tip of the tongue, it's from the tip of the tongue with the tip of the upper incisors. Same goes with the dhal and the tha. The tip of the tongue is with the tip of the upper incisors. So the makhraj of the dha, the dhal and the tha are from the same makhraj, from the tip of the tongue with the tip of the upper incisors. However, what's different between the dha, which is a picture on the right, versus the dhal and the tha on the left, is you can see the tongue there, and if you notice what happens on the right with the dha. With the dha, the picture on the right, the back of the tongue goes up, and the middle of the tongue is concave, or you can see the cupping of the middle of the tongue. And as well, on top of that, you have the epiglottis moves back a bit to narrow that area. So that's the difference between the dha versus the dhal and the tha. Mainly it's with the tongue and the epiglottis. And that gives the dha, al, that al pronunciation. So the makhraj, once again, of the dha, the dhal and the tha is from the tip of the tongue with the tip of the upper incisors. And the difference, the tongue, the back is elevated, the middle is cupped or concave, and the epiglottis moves back and narrows that area. So that's the first 2 points. What's the makhraj and what's the difference in terms of what the tongue does? The third point we want to talk about is some of the common errors with the dha, the dhal and the tha. The first common error with the dha is mixing it with a bit of a zai sound. So it's incorrect to say za, al-zalimin. Za is incorrect. We want to say al-zalimin, al-zalimin. And now that we know the makhraj, we can tell the difference. When we say Allah, you see how the tip is on the tip? Allah. If we say az, the tongue is even inside the teeth and not where the correct makhraj should be. And a common mistake with the dhal is pronouncing it closer to a zai. So rather than say al-dhakirin, that's the correct pronunciation, al-dhakirin. Incorrect would be to say az-zakirin, az. So we need to differentiate between the makhraj of dhal, tip of the tongue, with the tip of the upper incisors, versus the makhraj of azai, or a sound in between either. And with the tha, a common mistake with the tha is pronouncing it like a sin or closer to a sin, For example, the correct pronunciation, فَكَثَّرَكُمْ, فَكَثَّرَكُمْ. Incorrect would be to say, فَكَسَّرَكُمْ, فَكَسَّرَكُمْ. That's changing the makhraj completely to become more or closer towards a sin. So let's recap and revisit the learning outcomes. The first was to understand the makhraj of the dha, the dhal, and the tha. So we said all three are from the same makhraj, which is from the tip of the tongue with the tip of the upper incisors. And the second point was to understand what happens with the tongue and what's the difference. And we said that with the tongue, the back of the tongue with the dha goes upwards, and the middle of the tongue is cupped or is concave or curved upwards. And the epiglottis moves back to narrow that area. And the third one was to recognize some of the common mistakes, and some of the ones we mentioned were mainly attributed to the makhraj itself, the correct makhraj of dha, dhal, and tha versus other letters, or moving the makhraj closer to other letters. So that's the makhraj of the dha, the dhal, and the tha. And we'll see you in the next video, Insha'Allah. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.